This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Welcome to Iowa. Yes, indeed, great to be here. Penn State and Iowa tonight. That'll be at 9:30, or excuse me, 9 o'clock Eastern time. And we'll be on the air beginning at 8:30 tonight. And this will be an extended road trip for Penn State. We will do this show today here in Iowa City as you're listening right now, and then in Ann Arbor on Monday. And we'll spend the rest of the week in the Sunbury Motor Studio in State College. And then we'll begin the week after in the Sunbury Motor Studio in State College. And then we're going to do 3 shows from Los Angeles. Friday, Monday, and Tuesday coming up. So just to give everybody an idea. Before we get to Dave Spadaro, let's tell everybody that this show is being brought to you by, in this half hour, by Brewers Outlet. Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, imports domestics, micro brews, the best selection of beer anywhere, wine coolers, water, soft drink, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. They now have ready-to-drink cocktails, such as High Noon, Crown Royal, Jack Daniels, and the Pickle Bar, led by the 2 constants, the best actually, the Barrels and the Dills. Indeed, second to none. Outlet Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. And while in Ann Arbor, I'll be watching the Eagles and the Commanders at 3 o'clock on Sunday. Dave Spadaro joins us. Dave, what a pleasure. Always great to have you back.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here. Excited about Sunday, and I think it's going to be a great game, don't you?
Yeah, I do, because if there's been a team in recent years, whether it was Ron Rivera or now Dan Quinn, for whatever reason, and maybe you, because you've seen it in person, why have the Commanders at times been the team that's matched up decently or actually pretty well with the Eagles? Because most teams don't. Why does Washington match up with them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say they've matched up very well, and it's always kind of interesting when you look at your intra-division, I guess within the division rivals. There's always kind of like, well, we have that team's number, or that team has our number. You know, with Washington, it's always been a really, really close game, and yeah. I don't know. I really can't explain it. I don't know. I just know that Washington, no matter whether they're having a down year, a good year, an okay year, it's always a weird, close game, and that's what I'm expecting Sunday. And I don't think I do have an explanation for it.
Yeah, I mean, because I've always told people, Dave, it's always interesting in sports. Team A can easily beat Team B. Team B can easily beat Team C. And then something weird, Team C can beat Team A, and they'll go, why? I said they must match up. I mean, it's just that sports is strange like that. I want to get to Barkley for a moment. I feel like I'm watching, and look, if anybody knows, I guess I would know because I've watched him so much here, that he's like the great home run hitter. He is like watching Bryce Harper, Mike Schmidt, somebody like that, where you feel like every single time when they come to the plate, they can hit a home run. I feel like every time Barkley touches the ball, it's a 70-yard play potentially. What's it been like for you to watch him on an every-game basis?
Remarkable. And I've seen great players. I've seen great players for 30 years here with the Eagles, and there have been great players. And the best of all, I mean, more than 30 years ago, Reggie White, who was similar in that you just knew that he was going to make an impact. And with Saquon, every single game, he makes an impact. And you're on the edge of your seat waiting for him to bust the big one. So, as good as he is with the home runs, when you started saying he reminds you of home run hitters, the name that jumped to mind, and it was a really weird name, and I'll be honest. It was you were. I was afraid you were going to say Dave Kingman, and you were going to go, well, either hits a home run or strikes out. And I would tell you that Saquon never strikes out because he's always moving forward and creating something, and you know that there's always somebody who's keying on him. And but if it's not a home run, it's a single, double, triple. He just is just one of those running backs who has been so durable, so tough inside. And I think that nobody really talks about the numbers he's put up in terms of carries, touches, inside yardage, yards after contact. But from overall what it's been like, you have to step back and go, this is something extraordinary, because his year has been unlike anything we've ever seen.
I agree with you, Dave. Exactly. And Saquon knows I would never compare him to Dave Kingman.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like, Dave Kingman was either a strikeout or a home run.
I know. I know. But Saquon doesn't have strikeouts. I mean, it's amazing. What I love, the play that told me everything was the last touchdown run. Only the hash marks are shoveled at that point. He makes that cut about a yard inside the hash mark on snow, and he acted like he was cutting on dry land. That was a remarkable play.
Yeah, and he punctuated it with the helmet slapping and the show of expression, which I think was so refreshing to see. And you recognize just how much this all means to Saquon Barkley and how much he's enjoying playing football. Again, that if you don't know football, all you're focusing on is him in the clear running down the field. But to get to that point, an inside run that he bounces outside, the Rams once again brought a run blitz. They filled the gaps very well, and Saquon sees a little bit of daylight and adjusts, and those quick feet allow him to bounce outside, and boom, he's vertical. And it's so great to see a player who is a superstar. And there've been, in my career here, have been the Reggie Whites, the Brian Dawkins, Terrell Owens for a season, and Donovan was a star, but not a superstar. Right. And then I would put Saquon Barkley right there.
Let me talk about the defense for a moment. The defense last year, especially down the stretch, didn't play well. Enter Vic Fangio. Dave, how long do you think it took for Vic Fangio to really get in tune with his personnel and how he wanted to play? And once he did get in tune, how special has it been?
Yeah, I think the turning point was after the bye week, and they were able to put Cooper DeJean in to replace Avonte Maddox at nickel. Avante's had a really nice career, but he's just a little undersized and really got picked on from day one. I thought the Packers in Brazil really went after Avonte, and this is no slight on Avonte, who I love. But he's a smaller guy. And to get Cooper up to speed that quickly, to get him ready to go, very, very impressive. And then you just saw it get better and better. And then kind of in those, if you remember back to that time, they played the Browns with the troubles that they had offensively, particularly at the quarterback position with Deshaun Watson. And then they played the Giants with Daniel Jones. And both times the Eagles defense dominated. And it gave the Eagles, I'm not going to say they were preseason feel games, but they were games against two really bad offenses that gave the defense time to get its act together, gave Vic time to really find out what this personnel grouping could do, and had Moro Ojomo inside and Zach Bond at linebacker, and how are you going to use Nakobe Dean, and where's the safety position, how's that going to all shake out, and all of these things. And then they just kind of hit their stride and got better and better. And look, I didn't think last week was one of their best games, to be honest with you. I thought the Rams moved the football up and down the field on the Eagles at times, but they were able to take the football away twice. They were able to hold at the very end of the game. So This defense will be put to the test, no doubt, once again here on Sunday against Jaden Daniels. But they've seen Jaden two times. This will be his third time. I think they're as ready for him as you could possibly be.
Yeah, I'm going to get to the Ram thing in a moment because I thought the end of the game, there's a couple things that, if I'm an Eagles fan, would kind of bug me a little bit.
Yep.
I'll get to that in a second. I got to ask about Zach Bond. On a team that has, Mitchell, DeJean, Blankenship, Smith, Jalen Carter and so forth, what has Bond meant to what we're seeing success-wise with this Philadelphia defense?
He's the epitome of what the Eagles are all about and why this franchise is really good. And I'm going to tell you right now why. Again, this is the 8th time in 24 years that the Eagles are in the NFC Championship game. That is one out of every 3 years. And I know there's only one Lombardi trophy. I get it. But to reach the Final Four 8 times in 24 years is insane. And why is that? It works with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Bond is an example of a personnel department that recognizes something in Bond. A coach who says, okay, bring him in. We're going to try him out. He comes in and they go, well, let's maybe move him inside. And then all of a sudden, we've got a great athlete here. Vic Fangio says, I can make these skills work in my system. And boom, you've got a guy who is a marginal player in New Orleans, a role player in New Orleans, who's a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro, a finalist for the Associated Press Defensive Player of the Year. This doesn't happen. But it's an example of everybody being on the same page. It's an example of understanding your personnel when he gets here. It's an example of making sure that you fit your scheme around the personnel and that you've got some flexibility. You always hear coaches saying, I'm running my system, my system, my system, my system. Well, Nick Sirianni said it for 4 years now. It's not your system. It's how you tailor what you believe in schematically to the talent that you have. And for Vic Fangio to put Zach Bond in the spots that he's put him in, and for Zach to take advantage of this, certainly it helps when you have a defensive line that cleans up like the Eagles clean up front. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing story. And Zach is just a young man who has found his home. I believe he'll be here for a long time. It's certainly, I would imagine, a priority for Howie Roseman to keep Zach Bond. And I just love the story. I think it's just really a microcosm of why the Philadelphia Eagles are so good.
Great answer. Okay, now let's get to the end of the Rams game. And that they go no huddle. And I know the Eagles are not one of those teams that relies heavily on substitution, so I understand that. But they kept going, and the Eagles were running out of gas. You could see that they were tired based on how the Rams were attacking. And then I think the Rams made a gigantic mistake, and they huddled. Like, what are you doing? Like, don't let those guys breathe. It's like, no, I'm not rooting for anybody. I'm just watching as an observer. How concerning was it that the way I know it's Stafford. I got that part. He's got a ring, right? But how concerning was it the way they attacked it, going no huddle, and the Eagles seem to be a little bit on their heels?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I mean, number one, from that standpoint, Zach is the one with the green dot, and that was his first game he had the green dot without Nakobe Dean. So lining people up, it just seemed like the Eagles were a little bit sluggish lining up in the right spots. Something to work on. Fortunately, they survived. I believe that the next time that happens, they'll be better. But let's kind of look back at the season. And week 2, Atlanta, the Falcons come down the field, last minute, score, win the game. Jacksonville, Jaguars come down the field, Nakobe Dean interception in the end zone, saves the game. Washington, week 16, Jaden Daniels comes down the field, Washington wins at the end of the game. So there have been instances this year where the Eagles have not gotten that last stop. And I feel like, Vic is he talked about it after. He said everybody was in position to make the plays and give credit to the Rams and all that. But I got to believe that if it happens again, maybe he takes a different approach, that the drive before that last drive for the Rams last week was the one that was really concerning.
That's
I
right.
mean, the Rams ran 10 plays, went 70 yards, and took 1 minute and 40 seconds off the clock. Forcing the Eagles offense to come out, and a first down or two would have ended it, but, the Eagles played it very conservatively, and it came back to give the Rams another chance. So I got to believe at some point, Vic looks at it and goes, well, I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Maybe we need to tighten it up here, do something different there, whatever it is, because it is too close for comfort at the end of the games when the Eagles are on defense with a lead, trying to keep a team out of the end zone. It just seems like they give up too much too easily.
I was surprised that, to be honest with you, Nick didn't take a timeout at some point in that drive, just so his defense could just catch a moment. Right? I mean, you've got to be able to.
Like they made it. Stafford made a really great throw on the sideline. That Slay had great position on, mistimed his jump, and I get it. He was in a position, but it just can't keep happening where teams are just moving down the field, 4-man pressure, soft coverage, dink dunk. All of a sudden, they're at the 15-yard line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying take the time out because of something strategic. You take a time out sometimes, just go, hey, everybody let's catch your breath. We'll be fresh for the next play, right? And that's a feel for the game thing, and that's always been my concern about Nick, his feel for the game. That moment, he didn't have it.
Well, that's not Nick. I mean, that's not Vic. That's Vic's call to make. But I'll tell you this also. I mean, I get it.
Dave, I disagree with you. That's the head coach's call. He has the ability to call the timeout.
He calls a timeout, but that needs if you're giving your defensive coordinator full control of the defense, then he has to tell the head coach to take a timeout. So we'll agree to disagree, and that's fine. The point is,
that's fine.
This is why I think they probably didn't call a timeout, because then you're stopping the clock, and the Rams have no timeouts left. And so I kind of get it from that standpoint. Maybe a better strategy would be to force an incompletion. That would have been nice, right? Like, just do something to disrupt the flow of what the Rams were doing. But fair enough on your side. But and I know
fair enough on your side.
Timeout, but I think the cue has to come from Vic. I'm not sure that a head coach oversteps the boundaries, but maybe he does, of the defensive coordinator when you have somebody like Vic Fangio in that role.
And by the way, fair enough on your side. Okay. I just feel like there's a reason you are the head coach. Right?
Yeah. Well, sure.
Okay.
Hey, by the way, the good news is we're here to disagree. Fortunately, the Eagles survived.
But you know what, Dave? It's a fun debate because neither one of us cares if we're right. I don't care if I'm right. I just thought I'd throw it out there and see what we thought. Right. It doesn't matter. They won the game. That's all that matters. Now I want to get to a potential problem. I know we only got a minute to go here. He doesn't turn the ball over, but how tentative is Jalen Hurts' way he's playing right now?
Yeah, no doubt. I really believe. I know that everybody's talking about, and I think Jalen's done a great job with ball security. But I really believe that the Eagles need to strike with the passing game this weekend to, at the very least, keep the Washington Commanders defense honest. And this is a passing game that should be dynamic with the talent that they have. And I'm hoping that that's where the Eagles go with this early on Sunday's game.
Dave, doggone, you do a great job all the time. I appreciate you so much. Thanks a lot for being a part of the show today. I hate to say this. I think Washington may win. Something about Daniels. Something about him. I don't know. And I'm just throwing darts, Dave. I think Washington might win.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles have seen Washington. This will be the third time. They know how good Jaden is.
Yeah.
I think the loss of Sam Cosmi on the offensive line is huge. And the way that Washington won last time and the celebration on the field, I think it rankles this team. I think they were all PO'd coming out of Landover, Maryland. I think that means something. I really expect the Eagles to play a great game.
How's Juergens? Is it going to be Dickerson
He's on the practice field today, so that's a really good sign.
So, okay, that's a big sign, because if he doesn't, then Dickerson would have to move over, right?
Not the worst thing in the world, right? Bigger body.
Oh, no. He
stud in college. Steen has played left guard. Your concern would be if a man goes down. But the Eagles have some depth here, and that is something enviable to have.
You got that right. It's nothing like depth. Good depth. And you know what? We have a depth of great guests, and you're one of them. Thanks, Dave, so much.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Anytime, my friend. Thank you. All right. That was an interesting point about coordinators calling timeouts versus the head coach. To me, like, you're the head coach, the ultimate manager for a reason. But I understand what Dave's saying. Maybe Vic told him, I don't want to take a timeout. Maybe he did tell him that. Right? Well, at that point, all right, now it does become a decision for the head coach. He's like, all right, I'll trust my coordinator. It's a good point by Dave. All right, we'll take a break. This half hour brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour is brought to you by Sunbury Motor Company. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai. As you know, I went with Ford. And what a choice. And what a buying experience. If you were to ask me if I could do it all over again, I'd go there in a heartbeat. They also have Kia, Hyundai. It's all the best of new inventories, all with great warranties, by the way. When you're looking at pre-owned inventory, and I saw the lot was just filled with them, they go over each vehicle with a fine-tooth comb. That way your buying experience becomes, let's face it, better. And a great service department. Whether it happens to be quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all. It's Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Okay. First of all, you may have noticed the Raiders have a new coach. His name is Pete Carroll. How about that?
The young up-and-comer.
He steps in and becomes the oldest coach in the NFL. I think he's older than Belichick, right? So he's the oldest coach in the NFL.
I just read that now Sean Payton's the youngest coach in the AFC West at 61.
Okay. Well, they have experience. I mean, he's 74 years old. And let's face it, there are only 4 coaches ever. Jim Harbaugh, Jimmy Johnson, and Barry Switzer that have won a national championship while also taking their team to a Super Bowl. Now, Barry Switzer and Jimmy Johnson both won it. Jim Harbaugh did not. His brother John beat him. Carroll, of course, has won both. And that's one thing about – I've only been around Pete Carroll one time, and that was at the Rose Bowl in 2016. He does – now that we're going back like better than, a little 8 years, okay? But, boy, the energy of the guy, remarkable, okay? Great energy. And I know the people that have played for him, because there have been enough former Penn State guys that have played for him, like Jordan Hill, Michael Robinson. Look, they love the guy. Actually, I've been around. No, I should amend that. I actually was around Pete Carroll when Seattle beat Denver in the Super Bowl. And I covered Super Bowl Media Day. So I was around Pete Carroll then, too. So the only 2 times I've been around him. He's the head coach of the Raiders. Taylor Rapp, who made the interception down the sideline against Lamar Jackson, is out of the game on Sunday. Back and hip injuries. He's ruled out. Cole Bishop will start the game, along with Damar Hamlin. By the way, you always wonder, like on a play like that where Jackson throws the interception, did the receiver run the wrong route or whatever, or the quarterback make a mistake. Actually, this morning, to be honest with you, I've seen Hard Knocks, baby, an episode maybe 2 or 3 times ever in the history of the program. I'm sitting here in the hotel, and they did the AFC North one today, and it was about the Bills game. And Jackson says the interception was on him. He says I saw it wrong. Like, okay. Actually, my respect for Jackson is incredible. I mean, he is – everybody I've ever talked to that has been a teammate of his, I'm talking about former Penn State guys, they swear by him as the kind of leader and guy he is. And I'm watching that, and you can see why. All right. Andrews dropped the ball. I would say it was a good throw, not a great throw, but it was good. I mean, it was a good throw by Jackson. Andrews dropped it. And on the sideline, he's mic'd up, and he says, hey, he looks at him, he says, we're a team. He says, we win together, we lose together. I mean, tells you a lot. We've tried in these staff meetings to get the suit to say things like that, but it doesn't happen for some reason. Quinson Judkins is going to declare for the NFL draft. Was with Ole Miss last year, a year ago. Transferred to Ohio State, formed a terrific 1-2 punch with Travion Henderson. Had 3 touchdowns in the national championship game. He's going to the draft. It's going to be interesting to see where he gets picked up in the draft. There's a lot of things I like about him. But he's not a complete back. Like Barkley's a complete back. As an example, I mean, let's Christian McCaffrey when he's playing is a complete back. Judkins isn't quite that, but he's very good though. Very good. He's not a bad blocker in pass protection. As a receiver, he's just, he's a safety valve kind of player. He's not a home run hitter as a receiver, although he caught a touchdown pass in the title game. And just to let you know how much college sports has changed in its attitude to Las Vegas. Did you see today's announcement?
I saw today's announcement, and I also noticed the date.
Yes. It's going to be 2027 and January 25th. Now, this year was January 20th. So that means the championship game will take place 24 days after the quarterfinals? Really?
I was reading there's some sort of quirk in the schedule with New Year's Day that the NFL has pushed back that year, too. That's still the weekend of the divisional playoffs.
Okay. So does that mean New Year's Day is the 3rd in terms of, like, the quarterfinals?
I don't know, but somebody said it's like this because they couldn't figure out a way to get people the proper rest after the semis with the way that the days, whatever day New Year's Day is that year.
Okay, hold on. Let's just do this here. Where is this thing? So we all have phones now. So on the phone, of course, I have to find which app is the calendar. I found it. Good news. 26, 27. New Year's Day is...
I'm waiting for you to go, holy heck, it is the 3rd.
I think it's a Friday, right? Let me see here. So today, Friday. New Year's Day is a Friday, the 1st. So you could play New Year's Eve, play Friday, but does that mean they want to push back the semifinals to the 14th and 15th because they don't want them to play a week later in the 7th and 8th? I think that's the quirk. But isn't that a regular season weekend in the NFL, 2-3?
I was going to say it would have to if the divisional playoffs aren't until that last Saturday or that last weekend.
But what I think it has to do is if you play the quarterfinals on the 31st and the 1st, I think what they're trying to do is avoid playing on the 7th and 8th because that's the Thursday, Friday. So do you instead play – because the playoffs would open that weekend, the 9th and 10th, and they play a Monday night game on the 11th, right? Okay. So you don't want to use the 11th and 12th. So you probably have to wait till the 14th and 15th to play the semifinals, and that's why you play it on the 25th. That's got to be it. Because the 31st and the 1st are a Thursday, Friday, because you have one game on New Year's Eve and you have 3 on the 1st. The regular season for the NFL then ends that weekend. Okay? But then I don't think you want them to come back on the 7th and 8th. The reason you don't want them to come back on the 7th and the 8th is because it's less than a week for one of the teams. In other words, you could have the 31st come back, and it's a short week either way for one of the teams. One of the teams that wins on the 1st would have to come back 6 days. So they're trying to avoid that. So they move it to the 14th and 15th for the semifinals, and thus they want to have 10 days before the final, and that's the 25th. I'm glad we solved that. I feel much better. See, it's great having a phone that has a calendar app on it, doesn't it?
Man, that's going to be a long year.
I'll tell you right now, even going up to the 9th.
Yeah.
Penn State the latest Penn State had ever played a game before had been January 3rd because they played in the Orange Bowl against Florida State, and that was a January 3rd game. And then I remember then USC played Texas on, I think it was the 5th, something like that. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, that's a long season. Like this year was the 20th. Like, holy mackerel. Penn State wins that game over Notre Dame. The season would have been over Monday. That is a long year. That's why I think what you may see, I think there's a couple things you're going to see here eventually. You know, we have week 0 playing out in what this year would be August 23rd would be week 0, right? I got to go back to the app again. I got to go look.
Yeah, because I think that was the weekend that Georgia Tech and Florida State played over in Ireland.
Yeah, that was this year, but I'm talking about this upcoming year. In this upcoming year. Here, let's see here. August 23rd would be week 0. I think there's going to be a move at some point. See, it depends on how you want to handle January 1st. That's a big one. Okay? If you want to keep January 1st as a quarterfinal day, which is obviously a traditional day, and you want to keep that as a quarterfinal day and not a semifinal day, because the Rose Bowl wants to keep that spot, what do you do? You may want to. Penn State this year has 2 bye weeks in there, which is really good. And I think that's something that you're going to look at as to how you handle that. And what do you do with conference championship games? If, like, what the ACC has, I think the ACC is just throwing out, they're just throwing stuff against the wall here right now, seeing how people react. Well, I can react to it. Why bother having a championship game if a championship's not involved? If the first place team isn't in the championship game, that's absurd. Right? Like, you're trying to protect them? Protect them from what? You got 2 teams in this. You got both the teams in your title game in. The bottom line is your conference is not as good as the SEC or the Big Ten. Just not. Simple as that. But when you hear somebody propose that, you're like, wait a minute. Now, Clemson does not get in if they lose the game. Right? I think that's fair. I think Alabama gets in if Clemson loses the game.
Are they assuming that if, I guess SMU would have sat out, and then I don't know if they assume Miami gets in with a win then, and then but you still only get 2 teams, so it seems pointless.
At that point, you're gaming the system, and I don't respect gaming the system. If this goes to 14, I mentioned yesterday the meeting that is coming up in February with the SEC and Big Ten athletic directors. I think February 17th is the date, something like that they're going to meet before the College Football Playoff Committee meets. If they go to 14, expect the Big Ten and the SEC to ask for 4 automatic bids apiece. Now, the other conferences may not like it, but for goodness sakes, okay, it doesn't take a genius to sit there and look at those 2 conferences and say, you know what, the best teams are in those 2 conferences. I mean, really. Now, let's give Arizona State credit. They gave Texas all they could handle. Clemson fought pretty hard at Texas. Penn State eventually pulled away from SMU. Now that's, every year brings with it its own cycle. Okay? And different times, different cycles work out. But you can see the way everything is trending with the power of the Big Ten, the power of the SEC, and not only that, the power of the ratings they deliver. I mean, that's a big part of it. When we were talking about the semifinals, could you have asked, there are 10 power brands in America, okay? And 4 of those 10 played in the semifinals. You saw the power of the Michigan brand last year, what it meant to the ratings. Right? You saw the power of the Alabama brand, what it meant to the ratings. Georgia. right? Look, it's just the way it is. And the pathway for a Big Ten team to get in is a football version of a minefield. The pathway for an SEC team to get in is the football version of a minefield. There are not many off weeks in those conferences. In the ACC and the Big 12, there are off weeks. There's just not the depth. At least in my opinion. You may have a different opinion, Todd. So.
Well, I was going to say, what about Vanderbilt? But that kind of killed that this year, too, didn't it?
No, Vanderbilt, to his credit,
beat Alabama.
Let's give Clark Lee and his, and not only they beat Alabama, remember, Texas went in there and won by only 3. 27-24, I think, was the final. So let's give credit where credit is due to but like, for example, I'll give you one that this year was a down and out. That was Kentucky. Great defense. They couldn't muster enough offense. Kentucky's defense, by the way, was outstanding this year. Outstanding. Okay. But their offense, no. And they what were they, 1-7 in the SEC this year? Something like that.
With a win over Lane, right?
Yeah. Whoops.
Which was probably knocked them out of the playoff.
Whoops. All right. So, all right. The playoffs are coming up this weekend. Suit is having a big chip and dip day over at his house. Very exclusive, by the way. Invitation list. Did you hear about that?
If there was a list, I apparently was not on it.
Evidently, most of America wasn't. It's just his kid.
No.
All right, we'll come back, and his wife is a hostage over there. So, I mean, she has. All right, watch the game. We'll come back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.